Here's a couple of things you should know before you buy the Great Plains Yak 54. It's very tough. I've actually put this thing in the ground a couple of times doing low rolling harriers and my timing went off. And it still survived. I really like this plane. It's super tough. The only complaint I have is that right here where the motor mounts, they use a really thin plywood, and that's usually the first thing that breaks. And unfortunately, mine happened while I was doing an inverted flat spin, and it came off and hit my wing. I'll probably get some Hobby Light and fill that in. So what I did was I took a piece of I had a whole yardstick, and I cut about 1 inch or 2 inches off, and I glued it onto the firewall that was there with epoxy. Now it's super tough, and I really don't break it off as much anymore. As you could tell, I was just doing it, that's why it's all unplugged. Another thing you want to know is it's not really a floater compared to my Great Plains Extra 330 SC Foamy. That thing would float really well. This, I probably experimented by putting longer leading edges on it or trying to increase the ailerons. But it doesn't really want to float. I kind of have to keep power on, and it'll kind of tip stall one way. It does 3D alright. It's just that the floating thing, and that's kind of a big deal when you want a 3D Foamy. Another complaint is the landing gear. It's way too small. They really got to increase the size of it. This is an 11-inch prop, and I can kind of fit my finger in there just enough. They really have to increase the size, because usually people who run foamies have bigger props on it, bigger slow flyer, like 12 or 13-inch props. They really have to increase the size of the landing gear. I tried to, but I used wrong wire and it kind of spread out. The landing gear is okay if you take off by throwing it, or you take off from pavement, but it's not really that good in grass. Another thing is, the tail wheel that they supplied was kind of bad. I lost it the first time I used it, and it kind of got all bent out of shape anyway. So I took a skewer stick, and I glued it into the back there. I pushed it in, and I glued it. And that works out really well, too. It keeps the rudder off of the ground. Another thing is that you want to make sure you glue these control horns in really, really good. I actually lost this one in flight, and I just saw the rod hanging down. I didn't notice that I didn't have a rudder. And I'm focusing on the rod, and in the meantime I fly it into a tree, and it falls out of the tree, and it wasn't hurt, but, well, my ego was hurt, the plane wasn't hurt. And that's basically it. It's good for 40 bucks. You're not really looking for anything that special when you spend 40 bucks on a Foamy. But besides the floating, it's a really good airplane, and I would recommend it for anyone who wants to learn to fly low, or fly aerobatics, or start 3D. Anyway, have a great day flying, guys, and don't forget to subscribe.